United States government admits they don't need your taxes. All taxation is theft. We've been living a lie for decades, and decades. Brandon Gentile here. This is an incredibly important thing. Again, a lot of what we do is what is money? What are you working for? What are you trading? You sleep 8 hours every day. A third of your life, you sleep. You're gifted this time that we know it's impossible, almost impossible to become a human being. We're gifted all this time, and a third of it we spend sleeping. The other third we spend working. That leaves another third to eat, enjoy things we want to do, our passion, our calling, be with friends or family, whatever it is. So this is why this is so important. When you break it down, you realize how precious time is, that finite time. So we have to make an equal trade for that finite time. If we're going to trade our time, our finite time, what are we going to trade it for? Are we going to trade it for infinite pieces of paper or infinite digits on a computer? Or are we going to trade it for something else that's finite? That's the question. That is the big question. And this is one of those pieces that we find where we realize, and I realized 10, 12 years ago, oh my goodness, I'm being lied to. Everything I in my head when I was in high school and in college feeling that something was wrong. Why am I not being taught money? Why am I not being taught how to earn money, how to keep money, how to invest money, how to expand and multiply the money? None of that. Because number one, the teachers don't know, the academics don't know, but why don't they know? Because they're not taught. They purposely aren't taught that, and they're taught you to teach you, they're taught to have you worrying about other things that really are inconsequential in society. So why is that? During the 2012 US presidential election, I thought I had the country figured out. Being a 25-year-old, 24-year-old at the time, thinking I had the country, I had everything figured out. Just, I got it. I'm smart. We just had Obamacare shoved down all of our throats a couple years before and officially turned into a socialist state. Government forcing you, telling you what you can do with your health care. That is a socialist state. That's a communist state. That's just facts. That's what happened. Shoved down our throats in a cloture vote, I believe, and late at night. People didn't want it, but it got jammed through. And Nancy Pelosi told us we can find out what's in the bill when we pass it. We've heard that over and over again. Well, why is that? Well, number one, it's because the politicians aren't even writing the laws. They haven't written the laws in decades. It's the clerks and now the lobbyists and the people in the background, the bureaucrats, the swamp writing these bills that are stealing your freedom and your wealth one bill at a time, one letter at a time, one word at a time in these bills, and no one knows it's in them. So why even have politicians? Why even have representatives? I thought that freedom-loving people had finally figured it out. We were sick of the games that governments and banks were playing on us, destroying our currency and bailing out too big to fail entities at the expense of the people. The Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street protests on both sides of the aisle had been sweeping the nation for multiple years. Seemed obvious, as the crowd swarmed to Romney rallies, not because Romney was some great candidate, but because he was opposite of the guy and the two men, Obama and Biden, who gave us a socialized medicine and socialist state. Figured it out. Easy. And again, just like Richard Nixon wasn't the main person taking us out of the gold standard, it wasn't his fault completely. He was forced into that. Obama and Biden were just the remnants, the summation of decades of mismanagement and misallocation and a broken money that gave us people like that. It's not that Obama and Biden aren't doing what they should be doing, as Jim Rohn says, or Brian Tracy and all those guys, the personal development kings. Hey, liars are going to lie. Politicians are going to lie. That's what they do. It's what's in here that counts. How did so many people vote for those lies? That's the difference. How did 50 million, 60 million people, 70 million people vote for that? How did it get to that point? The writing was on the wall, and then it wasn't. Obama and Biden won again. None of it added up. How can you see massive rallies, River Rock or Red River Rock in Colorado, whatever the heck it is, the stadium, there's people just everywhere for Romney rallies. People forget that he had Trump rallies before Trump. And it was, okay, got it. We're going to start returning it back. Like I said, Romney wasn't necessarily the answer. He's not some constitutional, maven and some wonderful guy who's going to bring, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson back. But he was a step in the right direction of, okay, we're getting away from, we're getting back to, I should say, accountability, responsibility. We're going to start going back that direction and we're going to start figuring it out, right? Wrong. Very wrong. I sat there for 24 hours. I'll never forget, with my jaw on the floor, just sitting in my basement. My parents' basement at the time, so I moved back, quit playing hockey, and I was trying to figure out what I was doing with my life. And I'll never forget that feeling. Never. Just realized, you know what? We just had 08, 09, 10 happen. Millions of people out of their jobs. I remember moving family members out of their house, literally moving my family members out of their house when I was in school, not understanding what had quite happened and why I was moving them out of their house, packing up their boxes, taping things up, rolling off the ramp, houses that they had built themselves. And because of the policies of our government, because of the socialist state we were creating, they were being kicked out because their industries were collapsing because of the idiotic things government was doing. Government is not incentivized to be efficient or to be smart. That's not their job. Anything but. So how is this not obvious to the average person? How is the average person okay with sleeping a third of their life and going to work for a third of their life and being stolen from constantly and being lied to by politicians? I'll never forget those feelings of wheeling people's belongings, their life, into boxes and wheeling them into the ramp to leave the homes they've been in for decades that they built because of that depression. Because of 08, 09, 10, and what happened there, and the bailouts, too big to fail. People that you being told that, you know what, these people are more important than you. We're going to give these people bailouts and golden parachutes at the expense of you by printing this currency, by inflating the currency, so that way prices are going to run away from you, and eventually you're not going to be able to afford the food, gas, which we're seeing now. The remnants of this is all coming to fruition. Again, I sat there with that feeling, literally jaw on the floor, and never forget it. You could say it was similar to the 2020 election. Not much adding up. Again, I don't care. Trump, Biden doesn't matter. Don't care. Literally don't care, because those things don't matter. The red and blue, black, white, man, woman, doesn't matter. That's just a game to get you to fight. But again, one man, we're not going to mention names, one man was sitting in the basement the entire time, not doing a thing, not campaigning, doing nothing. The other man was having rallies with 10, 20, 30, 40,000 people. Doesn't win. Again, not much adding up. As Greg Manarino says, if you had a vote, it wouldn't count. Or since you do have a vote, it doesn't count. Do you really think you'd have a vote if it did count? Again, not saying it counts or not, just questions we all must be asking. As Thomas Jefferson said, question everything with boldness, even the existence of God himself. For if there is a God, surely he would respect education and study over blindfolded fear. One of my favorite quotes of all time. Every person on the planet, especially every American, needs to be questioning everything on every side, meaning homework will be done. Doesn't mean you're going to find the answer always. Doesn't mean you're going to get the right answer always. But improving yourself is the process you go through. That study, being creative, learning, that's the process. Because it's a never-ending finish line. As David Goggins says, the finish line is never, you hit one finish line, you're always going to the next. You're always trying to improve, you're always trying to get better. So what is it we can do next? How can we keep getting better? It only begs the question again, who is pulling the strings and how? That's a question I found myself asking a couple years prior when the bailouts were happening. Too big to fail. It's hard. George Bush is bailing people out. Barack Obama bailing people out. John McCain leaving the trail in 08 to go bail people out, vote for bailouts. That wasn't what I was for. I was Republican at the time, and that was anything but Republican government. Representative Republic like we are. That was nothing like, so what's going on? Mitt Romney is more of the same. So what are we doing? I knew then that I must change. And instead of waiting for everyone or everything else to change, that what changed my life. Took me on a completely different direction to study what was going on, to study the game that was being played on all of us. And boy, it wasn't a political game necessarily. It was a money game. The money game is what's being played on all of us. He, as the Rothschilds would say, he cared not who make the laws. As long as as long as I control the nation's money, I control everything. Right? I'm paraphrasing. That is the difference. None of this matters. That's why Nancy Pelosi can get away with saying, I don't care what's in it. We'll find out what's in it later. The fact that a grown adult let that fly and voted that person back in is mind-blowing to me. That's neither here nor there. But again, it's hard to get people to stop. When they're getting free things, it's hard for people to stop and vote against that. And politicians know that. Mitt Romney, on the hot mic, was crucified for saying in a leaked private campaign donor event during that election in 2012 that he wasn't worried about the 47% of the population because he wasn't going to campaign to them because they were the people on the government dole not paying federal taxes. And did you know now it's about, depending on what metrics you look at, about 57 to 60% of the population doesn't pay federal income taxes now. It's insanity. It's insanity. Dan Larimer, he's in the crypto world, used to be in Bitcoin. I don't know what he's doing now. He has a thing saying, why do people that aren't taxed get to vote? Why is that? We had taxation without representation, but why do you have representation without taxation? You could say the same thing. You know, you're getting taxed with no representation, but you could say the exact opposite thing too. Why do people who aren't paying tax get representation? Wouldn't life be much better and you have more incentive to vote for the right things if you actually had skin in the game? Again, people that don't have skin in the game are incentivized to vote for more politicians to give them more and more free things. That wasn't what Romney was campaigning for at the time. So he figured, why spend time talking to those people? Why spend your finite time on something that will give you little return? Smart move, until the media got a hold of it. Where must these free things come from, though? Well, there's only two places they can come from: other people's time and energy. Taxes, directly, or printing the currency, indirectly through inflation. It's the only place. We know from their own testimony that the government doesn't need taxes here in America. They have the currency printing machine in the basement, or the computer now to just type the digits into existence. Admittedly, they do it to coerce people and sway public opinion and punish people. If you don't believe me, hold on a second. These are from their own words. The average pleb doesn't realize the game being played on them. We have a majority of the country who have been successfully swindled into thinking that someone needs to pay taxes or doesn't pay their fair share, so that's affecting you and robbing you of your livelihood because someone else isn't paying their taxes. Now, you'd be right in the sense that when the government prints currency and then devalues every single dollar that someone has on them, when they print that currency, it does devalue every single dollar in existence. But someone not paying their taxes has zero effect on you directly. The goal should be for everyone to pay zero taxes, because that would mean everyone is operating incentivized to do what the government is telling them to do and following the tax code that's available for all people. Most people just choose not to learn it or not execute it, or both. And here we are from American Affairs in 1946 by Beardsley Ruml, chairman of the Federal Reserve, talking about tax revenues being obsolete. Yes, tax revenues are obsolete. The Fed themselves talking about what it's truly for. And you can go in here and look at this. And it's used for, really, taxes are just used for an instrument of fiscal policy to help stabilize the purchasing power of the dollar. Right. To express public policy in the distribution of wealth and income, as in the case of progressive income and estate taxes. Where have I seen that before? Oh, the Communist Manifesto, the people that want to destroy us, the Soviets, many of our enemies throughout the past, yes, and present, that's from that same manifesto. That's from that directly. And 3, to express public policy in subsidizing or in penalizing various industries and economic groups. And I apologize a little bit. I'm a little bit sick as well, but I want to get this out. This is so incredibly important. And then number 4, to isolate and assess directly the cost of certain national benefits such as highways and Social Security. Incredible. Absolutely incredible admission. And again, how come we're not taught that in school? How come we don't know these things? How come we're not taught any of this? What's the point? Because they wanted people to just go through and talk to whatever it is to them, and people not to know what's going on. So they can't revolt. They can't do anything. They can't figure out the game that's being played on them. That's why. This is not, when you start putting 2 and 2 together, again, as Thomas Sowell says, again, I'm paraphrasing, but one of the biggest travesties is that honorable people believe so much that dishonorable people in government have their best interest at heart. It is truly mind-blowing. Why do we trust these people so much? We know that the average person is good, but we know there's the 1% of people that generally gravitate towards power positions that want to do things that aren't in the best interest of the individual. That is, if there's one thing that history has shown us, it's that. What is your fair share? As more and more people are dependent on the system, it naturally causes them to be more reckless and aggressive on taking from those who produce, and the fair share is continually increased, always. The consumers who produce very little always need more and more to live on, as inflation is always going up. We're just printing things up, bailing people out, giving welfare, doing this, doing that, just to subsidize what's going on, or buy votes, whatever it may be. This is why there's never a threshold talked about or agreed upon. That's why logical thinkers are always like, well, give me, what's the fair share then? You're never going to get the answer. It's a fool's errand, because there is no threshold, because it's a ruse in general. It's always going to be increasing, because it's just a way to buy votes and pit the classes against each other. Because as we know, they don't need taxes. So why would they ever give you anything? There is no threshold needed for fair share, because they don't need your flipping taxes. They've said we can print everything. We don't need your taxes. Because the system requires a death spiral. as James Lavish, Greg Foss, Lawrence Lepard, and Jeff Booth have made clear, very clear over the last few years, this doesn't end until the entire economy finally implodes on itself in a full-blown currency crisis. Fair share, like I said, is a dividing tool that is used to campaign on, to buy votes, and not actually solve anything. They don't want to solve anything, because that's how they can keep dividing people. Why do we know this? Because, as we've shown, the government, like I said again, doesn't need your taxes, from their own words. The government has a spending problem, not a revenue collection problem. The government, again, we didn't have taxes. Boston Tea Party, 1773, was how the country was really started. That was the time the country started, and we were based on no taxes. Locales took care of themselves. Private organizations, churches, it just took care of the people in their community. They didn't need these overarching governments running everything in their life for them. That's not what America's was meant to be and set out to be. And now you look around and you can't even operate without government being in your life. We're going to do bailouts for this. We're going to give energy credits for that. Since where in the Constitution, where in any of our documents does it say that the government is supposed to be doing any of that? That's not how government is supposed to operate. Government is only there at the consent of the governed to protect your rights. That's it. That are outlined in the Declaration, Constitution, and Bill of Rights. That's it. That's it. All they're there to do. When you think about how far we've come, that's their only job. Their only job is to protect those rights that you have told them, hey, help protect these rights and put bad people away in jail, whatever. That's it. Protect the borders. Protect us. That's it. And protect these rights. You got to protect these rights for us. They don't do any of that. They don't protect life. I mean, look what's going on. We don't keep life sacred. So what's the point? If we don't keep life sacred, then what else is there in life? If you can't protect life itself, then nothing matters. That means anything goes. Does it not? Liberty, freedoms, what did we just say? They just strip your freedoms all the time. Patriot Act, privacy is gone, everything. And then pursuit of happiness or property. Well, they're telling you how they're going to tax you here. They're going to property taxes. You got property taxes on your property. They're going to take your cryptocurrency assets, Bitcoin, whatever. So what do you have? You don't have anything. Life, liberty, happiness. They're not protecting anything. They're doing anything but that. Again, if we weren't a nanny state, before we had the nanny state and let the government run everyone's life, we had very little to no taxes. If we weren't a nanny state, we wouldn't be paying, incentivizing people to stay home, do nothing, and not be producers. We just have taught everyone, incentivized everyone to be cage animals, to be zoo animals, and just consume and do nothing, provide zero to society. Well, of course, now you're going to be leaning heavily on the consumers of the society as that dwindles down, as people are like, screw it, I'm done. I give up, I'm crushed. And then it finally just implodes on itself. And you have to print more and more currency to make up for the deficit that the consumers are not producing for the rest of the people. That is the death spiral we are in. If you can wrap your head around the fact that the government themselves in America does not need your tax money, and we spend trillions more per year than we take in, then you can start to understand the gravity of the problems that lie ahead. It's a fool's errand to argue about who pays the most taxes or who doesn't pay taxes at all. When the man who just paid the most, Elon Musk, 10 to 12 billion in a year, whatever it was, and again, if these numbers aren't correct, it doesn't matter. You're getting the general point. They're close, right? But you realize we're trillions of dollars in deficit. 31 trillion is our deficit. And we're a trillion or so or more, 2 trillion a year in deficits. Right here, we have right now over $1 trillion in deficit for the year. We're spending 6 trillion a year. If you realize that, but you say, people want to make this claim of like, well, if Elon Musk would have done this and that, and billionaires, if you took the Forbes 100, we're going to show you, if you took all their wealth, what you would do and how it would absolutely destroy the country. So you decide, when you see the math actually, which no one gives you the math, here it is. What are you going to do? After you take all their wealth, all the businesses from these people, what are you going to do? Well, you destroyed everything. You destroyed the economy, destroyed zero, very little GDP. What happens that next year? Great, you paid for a year or two. What happens next? Take Apple, take Google, Tesla, Twitter, Amazon, take it all. Government owns it now, worth a couple $1 trillion. And then you have to liquidate the business now and get someone else to buy it. You got to get someone else to buy it for trillions, and now you pay the deficit for a year. Then what? You sold off Microsoft for $1 trillion. Great, you pay for the deficit for 1 year. How are you going to get the rest of the $5 trillion? Sold off the other companies. Okay, now you pay for the deficit or the federal spending, $6 trillion for 1 year. Apple, Tesla, Google, Amazon, Twitter. Cool. You paid for around the 1 year of federal spending. Wonderful. Now what? Again, here we go. This is a couple years old. So just say it's 10 trillion now. I mean, it could be more, but just, again, work with this. 10 trillion. 10 trillion. So you're going to pay for 1 to 2 years of spending. You're going to liquidate all these companies and pay for 2 years of spending. Even say just the deficit. We'll just use it just for the deficit, which just in theory, okay, 10 years. 10 years from now, then what? You liquidated all these companies, paid off and closed the deficit. You think government's going to keep spending within their means? No. They've shown they've never been able to do that. So you're going to have bigger and bigger deficits, yet you're liquidating all your assets inside your country. So then what? After 5 years, after 10 years, then what? So again, this is a Forbes 400. Their net worth, all the billionaires in the world. I think it's the world, actually. Yeah, I think it's the world. So I forget what this is now, but just say it's the world. And so now you're taking the world. This is even America. So most people won't even do this for you. I'm taking the world, though. So again, we're being very conservative, and it's going to say, what, in a few years, you're going to be done. You're toast. And this is the biggest thing. Producers flee and consumers get choked out. Beyond that, when you force all the creators and producers to flee, they're not going to produce anything anymore. And now you have less of a tax base and less creativity. What kind of productivity standard of living are you going to have now in your country? And the producers and innovators, creators and entrepreneurs are now gone from your country. And they've all fled. And then everyone else is fleeing too, because they're like, this place is garbage. There's nothing to do here. All the companies are gone. I can't even live. I'm in the Stone Age now. It's going to resemble a Stone Age society, going back in time, making everyone poor by the standard of living going down. Absolute insanity. This is added on top of all the wealth destruction you've created and not being able to fund your government anymore. You would have to have a government that prints its way out of everything and becomes a full banana republic, destroying the currency within the next couple of years, just to make up for now the deficits that now are 2, 5, 10 trillion a year. And it would just completely implode, as no one is going to buy your bonds and loan you any money, since they know you now have nothing to pay it back. There's no businesses, there's no activity, there's no production going on to then be able to pay all this back. Now, to finish, all taxation is theft. Coming full circle now. We've now realized, oh my goodness, all taxation is truly theft. We were a country founded because people have had enough with taxation, bureaucracy, regulation, and a lack of representation in their government. This is one of the main reasons that people came over to the New World. Religion and representation, taxes. It's time we start thinking of new ways to function without taxes, like we did before, new creative ways in the future, where private citizens, companies, and organizations locally run what's best for them, and being more decentralized, and harden our networks and logistics. What about no say and representation without taxation? Again, like I mentioned earlier, no representation without taxation, or no taxation without representation. What about the opposite? Why is there representation without being taxed? I digress. Again, this is why Bitcoin, I believe, is a system and will be the system that people gravitate to, that is being built already. It's not just like, oh, we're starting it now. It's already 13, 14 years in, and we're building it now. I talk to people every single day building it. We're going to start interviewing people and talking about what is actually going on, getting their message out to the world, and how we're building this new world and what's changing around all of us, and yet so few people see it already. We're talking about the problems, but again, we have the solutions. That's the beauty of this. I don't want to talk about just problems. That's the worst thing in the world. I did that for 10, 15 years, talking about just politics, problems, he said, she said. Screw that stuff. Solutions. I want solutions. These are the solutions, and they're here, they're now, and it's time to mount up. The more ideas, the more robust we can be, and the greater our strength. Stay strong. You got something else, please share. Like I said, I apologize that I'm sick. Appreciate you sticking with me. I think these are some incredibly important videos we've done in blogs recently. What is money? Truly, what is money? What does it mean? If we don't understand these base foundational concepts, these frameworks, it's going to be very hard, very, very hard to understand what's going on and how we can better our world and the people around us, our families, our posterity. If you liked it, please, like I said, like, subscribe, share, and let us know what we can do better. If you don't like it, dislike it, let us know what we can do better, how we can provide more value and a better education going forward, and what interviews you'd like to see. And I look forward to bringing you more and more content going forward. Appreciate your time, your attention, your energy. Truly the most important asset we have. We look forward to seeing you on the next one.